it's a wonderful thing that we can be together, although we are so far apart. And it's so nice that we can share something, and I feel really honored to share something of the journey that we experienced as we were preparing for the week of prayer for Christian unity. So I will tell you my story, I'll tell you our story, and then maybe we can take some time to hear how this intersects with your story. As we came together to write the text of the week of prayer for Christian unity, our region, the Middle East, was in disarray. Not only did we start working on this text at the beginning of the COVID lockdown and globally, but it was in our countries were deeply shaken by geopolitical changes and tensions. Lebanon in particular was witnessing a popular uprising. Years of corruption, incompetent leadership, and clientelism had pushed us to the limit. And so we burst into the streets, asking for change, asking for justice, asking for the removal of despotic leaders, but in vain. Few months later, another event shook us to the core. 2,700 tons of ammonium nitrate stored irresponsibly in warehouses at the Beirut seaport, which is in a very residential area, exploded in a quasi-nuclear fashion, demolishing homes, demolishing churches, mine included, shops, schools, hospitals, and killing, injuring, disabling, dislocating hundreds of people, and nobody was taken to justice. So with masks on our faces and aches in our hearts, we came together from the different church families in Lebanon and the region, and we composed the prayer and proposed the theme so that the world would pray with us for unity and for the church worldwide. On the one hand, as we were sitting and thinking about a text, we could not blot out the political and regional worries, nay, grievances. On the other, we were longing for God's gentle presence in the midst of our pain. And so this theme was born out of a scriptural text that joins a political challenge with a humble worship in front of a newborn babe. So I will take you now to some of the themes that this chosen text from Matthew 2, 1 to 12 offers us. It is the text, very well-known text of the visit of the Magi to Jerusalem and then to Bethlehem. So I will share, and then I'll hope that this also corresponds or intersects with your context in some way. The text is about these wise men, these Magi, who came from the east, it says, to the Te Anatole, to the place of its rising, to the rising of the star. Simply the east, to see a special king. The actions of this narrative take place in the east by people from the east. Tradition says that the Magi came from Persia. They brought with them myrrh and frankincense, which are trees that grow in Arabia. They visited Jerusalem and then Bethlehem. And after their departure, the Holy Family went down to Egypt. Reading this text, we felt as if these characters were moving among us and between us in the area we inhabit. The Middle East Council of Churches covers churches from Iran to the Levant, Lebanon and Syria, and down to Egypt. And so our area is included in this beautiful biblical text. This geographic area with a long history of Christian presence and rich and diverse liturgical traditions, where Epiphany is the more important feast, much more important than Christmas, and that's the text as well, is sadly being steadily emptied of its Christian population. The 20th century massacres and revolutions eliminated a sizable portion of the Christian population. And the 21st century wars and crises seem to be finishing them off. For the Christians of the Middle East, this has become an existential struggle. And then one that asks, what if there would be no more Christians in the East? No more Christians who know frankincense and who can daily walk the flight route in Egypt. What about the star who appeared in the east and the baby born in Bethlehem? Does this place not matter? Are we or are we not the guardians of that light in the place where it had first appeared? It is a question that we have asked ourselves over and over again, not only today, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 40 years ago. What about this place? But then as we were reading this text, we realized that this light, though it appeared in the east, is not only for the east, not even only for Christians. We looked at the Magi, those strangers, those outsiders, and we were humbled by the fact that they not only were hungry for the light, but could also recognize it when those close by could not. The insiders had no idea and did not see the extraordinary that was among them. And so thinking of the Magi, we had to reflect on the universality of the grace of God, not only geographically, but also to all the people. Here in this text, there is this light recognized by the others. Maybe it is a reference to the Gentiles, which is not only another ethnic group, but also a group of people with another religious practice. Stargazing, reading the signs of time in a kind of priestly ministry, an activity that was frowned upon by the Jews. After all, the Hebrew Bible forbade divination and astrology. We read that in Deuteronomy and in Isaiah. Yet it is not the kings of the Jews, nor their priests or wise Hebrew people close by who were attracted to it, but it was those others. Meditating on the Magi, we were also driven to think about how sometimes we tend to claim the light that came to dispel darkness through Christ, assuming it is only for us and behaving as if we alone understand it. In the Middle East, we are surrounded by so many other people, by Muslims, by Jews, and by other smaller religious groups. And we had to ask ourselves, what have we done with that light in their midst? Have we assumed that they could not see it? Some commentators point to the fact that the Magi relied on natural revelation or general revelation, which is represented here in the star, to get to the region. But they needed this special revelation, recalled by Herod's chief priests and scribes, in order to find the exact location of Christ, Bethlehem of Judea. Though this separation between natural revelation and special revelation is a divisive discussion among us Christians, and we don't all make this division, yet it does raise for us the importance of our special revelation as we gather around Scripture. The light is for everyone, and our Scripture should also be accessible and understandable to everyone, particularly in our dark world. A world becoming darker today as confusion reigns and no one seems to know the way, as despair is rising with the after effects of COVID-19. Now, for us in the Middle East, this darkness seems to be our steady companion. Since the days of Herod, one empire after the other took turn in occupying and oppressing our people. Of course, we had to admit, and we have to admit, that as Christians, we sometimes cooperated with the oppressors and sometimes made great compromises. But the fact remains that up until today, leadership and kingship are thorny topics. As we were writing our text, we looked around at the world leaders around us and at the models we find not only in politics, but also in the church. And we were wondering, from whom have we learned our models of leadership? From the self-emptying Christ, who did not regard equality with God as something to be exploited, or from the Herods of this world. Herod, that despotic leader, made king over his own people with the aid of the imperial occupier Rome and through warfare. He was not there to serve others, but to serve himself. He was paranoid and insecure, fearing the one born king because he knew he did not deserve leadership. And so in order to safeguard his position, he resorts to lying and deceit, pretends to be religious, claiming that he too wanted to worship the new king, a ruse that would help him kill and retain power. Eventually, of course, we know he did execute a massacre. Many innocents are killed so that one person stays in power. And no one seemed to be bothered by it, except the wailing parents. So many wailing parents, not only in Judea, but in Gaza, in the West Bank, in Aleppo, in Beirut, in Baghdad, in Cairo, and in so many other places in the world. The sound of wailing parents filling the air. Herod's despotic rule drove the Holy Family, just like so many other families in their circumstances, to become refugees. And so they went to Toronto, to Vancouver. They joined the Syrian community in Ottawa and Halifax, or the Iranians in Calgary. What a terrible scene. It is, in our minds, of course, connected to this beautiful Christmas manger, the scene where normally we enact in church on Christmas Eve, having 3 nice kings coming with beautiful crowns and presents. But in reality, it is a horrific scene, a scene of crying, of injustice, of despot ruler. And that also resonated a lot with us, with what we are experiencing in the Middle East. But just in the midst of all this injustice and violence, there is the serene Christ, the one who makes war cease to the end of the earth, the one who presents us with a completely different kind of kingship than the one encountered in Herod and the Herods of the world. A king who came to serve but not to be served. He was born in a margin to be with those in the margin. In the small town of Bethlehem, an insignificant place, and in an unusual family. His birth and his life brought both peace and disruption. And we felt called when we were reading this. We felt called together as churches and communities of faith to bring peace, but also to bring disruption. Maybe something unusual to think about. The disruption of oppressive structures and systems of injustice that permeate our world. And by disturbing, we also wanted to work towards peace for those who are downtrodden, pushed to the margin, robbed of their humanity, massacred, traumatized, starved, impelled to become refugees of war or of climate change. As we thought about this, as we thought about this challenge of bringing peace and disruption, we in the Middle East have asked ourselves, can we speak of such callings, such tremendous callings, to disturb the comfortable and to comfort the disturbed, to stand up in the face of tyranny and challenge systems? We Middle Eastern Christians who are shrinking by the hour and are weakened with every new blow. Can few people do this? Can weak people do this? And so before being discouraged, we thought of Bethlehem, and we thought about this text. You, Bethlehem, are by no means least. Being small, being weak, a little flock, a small grain, a bit of salt, have never been a problem in Scripture. On the contrary, this has always been a means for blessing. In our consumerist world, where we are taught to think with the logic of the market, we have come to confuse numbers with success. To think that bigger is better, This has not only been discouraging for us, but we see many of our friends, of our partners in Europe and in other places where secularism has been slimming down numbers. We have seen them stand paralyzed, terrified of the smaller flock. The focus on number has blinded us from focusing on our gifts. And so we told ourselves, these different churches of the Middle East, what we need to do is not focus on the decreasing numbers, but we need to think and focus on the gifts that we bring. The gifts that we bring together, gifts that are unique for each family, each Christian family, and that we can lay down together at the feet of the newborn King. And these gifts together can tell a story. They can witness to the royal and divine child who would die for the life of the world. Just like the gifts of the Magi, myrrh, frankincense, and gold can tell about royalty, the divinity, and suffering. Finally, we have pondered upon one little extra detail in the story. The mention of the new way or the different way. It is a little detail in the story that probably was intended to reveal the evil of Herod and the saving message of God, telling the Magi to return through another way. But somehow we made this hermeneutical jump, maybe unjustifiably, but we were inspired by that sentence. It made us think and ask whether God is maybe calling us to take another way, a new way, different from what we have been doing so far. Particularly in these COVID times, in crisis times, in changing times, in times when maybe many of us, particularly in the ecumenical circles, are tired of speaking of the same things and doing things the same old way. So, not knowing what the answer is, we placed this particular topic in our prayers, and we asked the Lord to show us a new way, to give us creativity as we seek to walk together in our ecumenical journey, following the light of the star, so that we can rejoice with great rejoicing. This was our journey with this text. I hope that gathering around it, it will also inspire you along your journey. I would like to mention again, from what I have said, 6 points that we thought as we discussed this topic were important. And maybe I'll just summarize them now a little bit, just by points. And I wonder which one of these would resonate with you and your trajectory and your story. And please feel free to say it, maybe in the chat, or if it's possible, and Maria would allow you to say it out loud. And the first point for us was location. What does location mean? The second was related to interreligious talk and dialogue with other religions, and thinking how much do they see and how much can we do in order to help and in order to enlighten. And the third important topic for us was politics, particularly related to political power and injustice, something that we are suffering from, something that we don't know how to deal with all the time in a best possible way. The fourth topic that came to the fore was migration. Families, people who are on the move. And we in the Middle East have discovered that we have more people in diaspora than we have in Lebanon and Syria and Jordan and Egypt anymore. Most of our people are outside of the region, and yet they are connected to us. And the fifth is the issue of being minority, or the issue of numbers. Again, I don't know how much it's an issue for you in Canada, feeling that we are small, that we are weak, that maybe we're losing people. And what does that mean for our witness and our life in churches? And the sixth is the new way. Is there maybe a new way? Should we be looking for new ways, for another way? So these 5, location, the other, political leadership, migration, minority, and a new way. Would this intersect in one way or the other with your experience?